Okay, so you have this idea, you're saying.
Yeah. I have this idea,
Uh-huh.
and I wanted to create a website that was a treatment resource for everything behavioral health. But I wanted to do it in this sort of 3D small town image. And imagine, if you will, like the old West, where you have, your tumbleweeds, and you have, Doc's Pharmacy, and you have the saloon, and
Sure.
you have the motels.
You're walking down
and,
the one thing,
right?
and everything's...
There's a lot of just traffic and busyness and all horses and whatever. So the idea would be you'd enter into Destination Hope, and if you needed a psychiatrist, you click on the doctor's office, and it would come up, however many psychiatrists were in the area.
So this was an online idea.
This was an online idea.
And the plan for it, or the name of it, was going to be Destination Hope.
That's correct.
Almost like the name of the town.
Exactly right.
Okay.
So then you go to Doc's Pharmacy, you click on the pharmacy, and it tells you could find about any legal or illegal drug and the effects of it, and so that was my idea. And I know it had teeth to it, and I started to develop it, but I needed some money to make it happen, and
sure.
I didn't have two nickels to rub together.
So it was a complex site.
Here I am. I created this whole thing. I wrote out the plot. What it would offer, and all these things, and I shelved it. I just put it on the shelf.
Right.
I think this was about 1997, and I just was in the field of behavioral health, working. I worked as a behavioral health tech. They used to call it nursing aid, where you take people's blood pressures and temperatures. I worked as a case manager, as a discharge planner. I worked as a therapist in a psych hospital, in a duly diagnosed unit for the mentally ill and the drug dependent.
So you had the credentials at that point from college to do that? Or?
I had that from graduate school, right?
Okay,
I had a
right.
master's, and I was studying for my licensure too.
Okay, so right, you're still now achieving even more in that sector.
Right.
Okay.
So I'm building myself up, and so what I decided to do was network myself. So I worked for a very big psychiatric hospital, and they, you had all these treatment centers in South Florida, and they would refer their unstable patients to the psych hospital. So I would get to know them, and I would get to know the referrals, and then the other half of it is, well, you gotta either send the patient back to where they would refer from, because that's good business, or if not, you gotta find them a new place.
Right.
So I'm not the type of person to just send somebody somewhere sight unseen and basically lie to the family.
Right.
Tell them that, yeah, it's a great place. So I would go and meet all these people. So I built up my network again. That I knew treatment owners and discharge planners and clinicians and marketers, and I eventually I actually got a really good paying job because of that. I ended up being a family therapist for a very big treatment program up in Palm Beach. So it was a really good stepping stone for me.
Right.
And then I didn't really like working for that place. I didn't really see eye to eye with the management. They were very, very confrontational. Like, the kind of people that, they'd look at you and say, why are you wearing a blue shirt?
Right.
What do you got? What do you got? Daddy issues? And
Right.
like really try to get under your skin, humiliate you, and then build you back up. That's not really my style.
Right.
So I was fired from that job.
What was the name of that? Are you allowed to say what the name of that?
It was Renaissance Institute.
Okay.
Yeah, and by the way, I actually got a lot out of working there.
Right.
So it was not a total loss. And I don't really have anything bad to say. I just didn't agree with the philosophy.
Right. Understood.
So I leave there with no job. At this point, Suzanne is home. She's only working part-time, and I think our daughter was like 1.
So you had your first child.
Yeah, and here I am
going through this.
Right,
Uh-huh.
and I come home and I'm unemployed. Within 48 hours, I had my next job. and that's a credit to the networking that I did. I knew a lot of people, and all I did was pick up the phone. I called everybody I knew, and I ended up getting like 3 jobs, to make sure the rent was paid, and from there, I built up my reputation as a person that was trustworthy. I was loyal, and my word actually meant something. And so I worked in nonprofit and for-profit. The nonprofit world was through Nova Southeastern University, this 18-month patient stay program, where this is where what we were talking about earlier about the different, what do you call it? Is it rehab?
Sure.
So this was a dual diagnosis treatment center where.
What does that mean?
That means that they have a primary diagnosis of a mental health issue or a drug addiction. Usually, in this case, it was more mental health, but definitely severe drug addiction. So you'd see somebody who was schizophrenic and had a heroin addiction.
Right.
Just as an example, depression, anxiety. So it was very difficult work. These were the bottom of the barrel, an inch away from inpatient psych, where they have the door locked or you can't get out, and it was very stressful, but very rewarding. And these patients, I'm going to tell you a couple things about it. I love these guys and the lady. They were fantastic. They were good people, and there's not enough resources for the mentally ill in our country. There isn't. I mean, they're walking the streets. They're in jail right now. They're in jail right now. There's not places like this, and they're also not treated with the respect and dignity that they deserve.
Right.
So a couple of things while I was there really stood out to me. One of the things that stood out to me was because I was working for Nova Southeastern University, a college which has its own politics. So you had that. Then the actual program that I ran was a Medicaid Medicare program. So you've got all kinds of rules with Medicaid and Medicare. For example, if Medicaid Medicare, they literally will come out and measure your group room. It has to meet certain standards.
Sure. Yeah. Anything to disqualify.
Just as an example, right? So I'm doing this and I'm learning and we are it's almost like one big family, because I knew all the parents, and I knew all the siblings and all the kids and all the patients. So the government at that time, they said that we're no longer going to call patients or patients clients anymore. You must call them consumers. This was something that literally the federal government wanted to implement.
Right.
I don't know what that means.
I was going to ask you as a
I don't know what that means, and I refuse to do it.
Right.
So what I did was, I said to myself, I'm not going to tell them that we're going to have to call you consumers. I'm actually going to meet with the patients, and I'm going to ask them what they think.
Right.
And whatever they decide, that's what I'm going to do. So I met with them, and I told them, and I said, the government wants us to start calling you consumers.
Right.
So I got 2 responses. I'll never forget it. The first response was, why don't you just call me by my first name? Which I thought was phenomenal.
Right.
Right? And then the other one was, why would we be called consumers? What are we buying?
Right.
It feels like you're selling something to me. So
that's what a consumer is.
We actually wrote a letter. I wrote a letter to the government, I think to the president, and I had all of them sign it, kind of like our Declaration of Independence.
Right.
And we got a response back that basically said, it's something temporary and it's not mandated and it's great and thank you for reaching out and doing all the things that you're doing. But for them to get a response, they were they were real happy about that.
Right.
So that was very rewarding. And after that episode of being the program director, I moved in the for-profit, and I haven't looked back since. I've been in the for-profit treatment arena since.
Okay.
And it's there, and this is going back over 20 years ago. I was introduced to a different kind of owner. A lot of them were very smart, but a lot of them very corrupt. You had owners that had drug addiction problems who were actively using.
These are owners of facilities,
Correct.
you're saying? Okay.
Correct. And I think it still goes on today.
Right.
You had, attorneys that were disbarred, that, and because they went to treatment or they got into recovery, they think they know, and, their business tactics maybe worked for a little while, but not in the end.
Right.
So that was eye-opening to me. I was told by several colleagues of mine that one of my reputations was I learned how to swim with the sharks. And I took that as a compliment, but at the same time, I don't want to swim with the sharks.
Right.
I appreciate it, but I don't really want to. And so I worked in treatment. I worked for some of these owners. Some of them were, when they were on, they were really good. And I learned from all of them. There were some that were just phenomenal business people, and that was great. And there was other ones that were really good marketers. So I just collected data. And then finally one day I said, you know what, I can open up my own place. And I wiped off the dust of Destination Hope. And in 2006 I made it a reality, and we opened our doors in 2007.